Our listeners know that I consider myself to be a pretty active person. I don't know that I qualify as an athlete, but I certainly aspire to be. I played tennis yesterday for 2 hours in about 95-degree temperature, and it was really humid in South Florida just yesterday. The thing that I reach for every day now in my normal regimen is some masculine man invigorate deodorant. We had Elliot Greenberg, the founder and owner of the company, on The Truth recently, and we've invited him back to give us an update of how is it going. Welcome back, Elliot.
Thanks for having me, John. Things are going great.
Good. You know, when I was younger, I've always enjoyed dressing well and looking nice. I've tried to take care of my appearance. People like me used to be called metrosexual. I guess that's what I would have identified as. And now there's this guy named Clavicular who is from South Florida, and he has started this movement, or I'm not sure what you call it, but he's invented his own verbiage, his own language. And now he calls it looks maxing.
Yeah.
Now that was unheard of 30 years ago, 20 years ago for a dude. I mean, you were just not really considered to be, I don't know, macho if you concerned about your looks or the way you dressed or any of that stuff. Now it's becoming almost mainstream, and we see younger guys really working not only just to improve their aesthetics, but actually kind of obsess about it. If you have looked at Clav's work at all.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of fascinating. What do you find?
Well, I see the guy everywhere, all over Instagram and X.
Everywhere. I mean, he is
everywhere.
given new definition to going viral.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, guys should care about the way that they look, the way that they present themselves. You know, I think for a long time, the TV shows and the media, and they portrayed dads as the stupid ones, the fat ones, the overweight ones, the Al Bundys that would sit on a couch and, you know, they just weren't the ones that were driving household decisions, right? And that has really changed. I think people nowadays really care about the way that they look. They don't want a dad bod. They want to look great. They want to carry themselves well. They want to dress well. They want to smell great. They want to attract women, and they want to be confident. And I think all of that is fantastic for, you know, the men of today and the men that are coming up, that are currently teenagers, you know, growing into men.
Well, as I said, I think I said it, I'll repeat it if I did, that, you know, every morning when I wake up, I go into my bathroom and brush my teeth, water pick my teeth. And if I've already showered, then I put on some masculine man invigorate deodorant. And I don't think it really has that much of an aroma, but to the extent that I do detect it, it's very pleasant. But it lasts the whole day long. It's not like sunscreen that you have to reapply every 3 or 4 hours. If I got it right,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm losing it and don't know it.
No. Look, a deodorant should last you the entire day. Nobody wants to carry around a deodorant that they have to reapply throughout the day. And as we talked about the last time that we had a discussion, that was the reason that this brand was created, right? A few years ago, me and my son were trying to make healthier alternatives. We were moving away from the aluminum in the products, and we were moving into natural deodorants where you understand what you're putting on your skin because it all gets absorbed into your body. And although you're trying to make a healthier decision for you, if the product doesn't last, which is what we consistently saw with products in the marketplace, it kind of defeats the purpose. And so I spent a year hiring a chemist, and we just kept working on different formulas because I knew that there's a market that if you create a product that works great, smells great, lasts the entire day, you're going to resonate with a good amount of customers that want to support your brand. And so that's
So,
what we did.
so you've spoken a couple of times about your son and shared with us that he works in the business. Do you mind me asking how old he is?
Yeah, he's 16.
16?
Yep.
Does he know about looks maxing?
Oh yeah.
And what does he think about it?
I mean, he had me buy these jaw exercise things
Yeah.
that you put in your teeth and you chewing on it and you're working
I've seen him.
you're working your jawline. And I mean, he's a good looking boy, and he wants to be even better looking. And
So he would be okay with looks maxing.
yeah.
I mentioned, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. It's your breadth of your shoulders, I guess, and chest. Clavicular? That's the dude's name,
Yep.
or the name he's adopted. Clavicular. I mentioned his name to my 38-year-old son, and it sparked a very immediate negative reaction, a knee-jerk negative reaction. He felt that clavicular was shallow, self-absorbed, not a godly-like person, that instead of expending his energy outwardly towards helping other people, that he was just obsessed with his own looks and getting girls and being on the party scene. And then I mentioned clavicular because, frankly, I am very mesmerized by what he has done. He's 20 years old. He's making $120,000 a month as a podcaster.
Yep.
Now, I've been podcasting for 4 years, and we hadn't made $120,000 in 4 years. We hope to change that soon, but we're getting traction, and we're starting to climb the proverbial ladder, and our revenues have picked up a lot in the last 6 months as we've gotten more viewership. But what this guy has done is nothing short of a miracle. I mean, he gets over 1 million and 3 million hits on his videos that are kind of reality based, and he's a millionaire pretty much overnight. And the real question is, how long can he sustain it? But is he somebody that you would want to team up with, that you would want to do some joint marketing and branding with?
From his popularity, yes, but I do agree with your son.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to pull out of you in a nice way.
Yeah, because I don't like the way that he treats women. And the self-absorbed and the self-obsession. I don't think that's how. I think caring about the way that you look, caring about the way that you represent yourself, caring about the way that you dress and attract the opposite sex and all that is extremely important. But I mean, I'm not for misogynist behavior. I've been with my wife since I'm 15 years old, and I have the utmost respect for her, and I have the utmost respect for my friends' wives, and I just don't treat women the way that he does. So I don't like that.
Neither does my son. Neither does my son's good friend, and neither does my wife. They all reach the same conclusion. Now, I, on the other hand, am just a greedy capitalist businessman. And so I don't really look at his personal behavior as part of my assessment. I just look at the fact that he has tapped into something
1,000%.
that I think young men have maybe had this repressed desire to improve their looks, improve their appearance, and it has gone worldwide viral. So I'm not excusing or making any kind of rationalization for the way that he treats women.
Hmm.
It's just not part of my calculus. I don't know what that says about me. I guess I'm just willing to compartmentalize and put that over there that, God will judge him and deal with him, and karma will reward or punish him accordingly. But I think what I'm intrigued by is how many young men are drawn to what he is saying. And it does seem to be like, as I was saying, 30 years ago, no men would admit to doing anything to work on their appearance.
Hmm.
Men who really dressed fastidiously were sometimes mocked or teased about. Then we became to accept that a little bit, I think, through this notion of metrosexuals. It was kind of a kinder, gentler way to point out men who dressed and cared about their appearance. And now it seems to have transitioned and gone really exponentially high in terms of the growth, the looks maxing.
Yeah.
Which I just think is in itself kind of a funny term.
Yeah. I agree with all that. What he's done to create attention for himself and build a name, it's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable how you can
Well, I think that
create that kind of
is relevant.
attention.
I think it's relevant to Masculine Man Essentials in that you've got a ready-made market that's just waiting on you.
Yeah.
And really is begging for the things that the deodorant that you sell and possibly future products that you've got in development.
Absolutely.
So how can you tap into that generation and reach them?
I think it's working with, people like that. It's just getting more attention, getting more people to try the product. Getting introduced to the right people that, want to work with the brand, want to represent the brand, want to talk about the brand, coming out with other amazing products that also will resonate with them, with things that they care about, not just from, a natural deodorant standpoint, but also a natural body wash, shampoos, conditioners, all those things that are going to keep men smelling great, going to keep them healthy. And from a branding standpoint, just tap into, masculinity with what it is, right? That was a very important key, just based on how men have been treated, um, you know, with this whole toxic masculinity movement for many, many years, and we need to move
Yeah,
away from that as quickly as possible, right? Real men are going to save America.
totally. So body wash and shampoo, are those coming down the pike next?
Yep. Everything's being worked on right now. We're working on our natural body wash. That'll probably be out first. I'm working on natural bar soaps. Those have been in the works for about a year now. And we just continue to make more tweaks, even though I'm happy with the product. It needs to be better. And then shampoo and conditioner, we're going into our first version of the formulation. And then after that, it will be lotion and also like a tattoo cream to preserve your tattoos.
Don't have any of those, but sign me up for the body wash, shampoo, and soaps.
I'll be
I
sending them
really
your
struggle
way.
to find. I really struggle to find stuff I like. I mean, I just use Dove soap and some kind of over-the-counter shampoo that my wife says is really bad for your scalp, and I shouldn't be using it. So I don't know. I don't obsess over it, but I'm certainly open to receiving information and trying new products that will make me
Yeah.
look younger and feel more vital
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
invigorate me like your deodorant.
Well, thank you.
When you get to my age, you'll cling to pretty much anything.
Thank you.
All right.
We're trying
thank you.
hard to make something great for you.
Thank you, Elliot Greenberg. And I think you're onto something very special. It's called Masculine Man Essentials. You can find it on the web. Just go to masculinemanessentials.com and you can try the 2 or 4 pack deodorant. And I personally Highly recommend it.
Thank you so much, John. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Elliot. Come back soon and often. We'll get right back to the show after this brief word from our sponsor, Masculine Man Essentials. Look, most deodorants on the shelf are full of aluminum, parabens, and synthetic junk. Masculine Man Essentials goes at it differently. All natural ingredients, built for men, and it actually holds up through the whole day long. Whether you're at the office, at the gym, in traffic, or just getting home for the night, try Masculine Man Essentials. I've been using it, and I can tell you, it's the real deal. Head to masculinemanessentials.com, grab yourself a 2-pack or a 4-pack, use the promo code TRUTH at the checkout to save on your first order, and the link is in today's show notes. Jay Ford is an author. He has written a book called Rustling of the Sycamore. What you reckon that's about? Well, that's why we're pleased to have Jay with us on The Truth today and to talk about his book. Jay, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. I really appreciate it and look forward to the discussion.
Well, so tell us about Rustling of the Sycamore and what are you trying to tell us?
Yes, so a couple of things. First, I'm very much driving an initiative that I think is critical. Couldn't be more important, especially as we see this kind of culture war unfolding within the country. And it's around how do we get teenagers and young adults back to books, back to reading again. Because social media, I mean, it's just the numbers are staggering, the impact that it's having mentally, physically, culturally. And so, if you go even online, they have the U.S. Surgeon General. They just put out some statistics, and 95% of kids say that they use social media pretty significantly. The average is 3 to 4 hours. Some of them 6 to 7 to 8 hours a day. And then what's really interesting about it is a lot of them report that they have depression. A lot of them say that 65% of the content they see it impacts them negatively. And so, one of the most important things to me is how do we get kids reading? And of course, that's part of, this is not my first book. This is my fifth, sixth book, but this is the first one that I've used to approach that genre because I think the thing that's missing is really good content. A lot of the material that is out there over the last several years has become very agenda based, and what the teenagers that I was writing for or young adults, they're looking for things that are action, that are family, that have a lot of interesting things that are typical for traditional values, but also captures their attention, that makes them want to put down a device and actually pick up a book.
Do you ever go on social media?
I do because I sort of that's the chicken and egg problem. You kind of have to, but there's also balance, and I think that's one of the things from our initiative that I'm really driving is working with the parents to help them understand how do you set those right boundaries.
Well, I think we need to reintroduce a value in our country that seems to have been lost in the shuffle. It's called self-discipline. And I'll just tell you, I spend an inordinate amount of time on YouTube, much like someone would used to have spent time on CNN or Fox, but I'm in search of news and I'm also in search of the truth. And so I find a lot of our guests on YouTube, but occasionally I will succumb to the temptation to click on a short, and 30 minutes later, I'm still watching shorts. They absolutely are addictive. They're a minute to 3 minute reels, and they just suck you in, and then they keep you there. And I'll be, oh my God, I've wasted the last half hour accomplishing nothing. But it's just sheer entertainment or mindless activity. I think we're all we're all subject to. If you go there, I have to consciously wean myself off of it.
And you raise one of the most critical points. So why is that? And the primary reason is because things like outrage, fear, sensationalized content drive the algorithms, right? Most of the content that people view, especially when they aim it towards children, are being decided by algorithms. They have these algorithms in the background. So anything that causes that sensationalization, that makes the algorithm want to put that more likely to be in their feeds. So they get more and more sensationalized content, which drives stronger and stronger reactions. And that leads to a lot of these children becoming, or young adults becoming, more desensitized. And the more desensitized they come, they start to get in this spiral where it takes more and more sensationalized information or outrage to get an emotional response. And that's how they get into this pattern of depression or negativity or all the things that these algorithms can cause.
Well, we're trying to drive our YouTube subscribers and viewership. It's like watching paint dry. Could you be provocative or say something sensationally, marks of sensationalism or outrage, so that we can get a higher percentage of viewers for today's show? One
Yeah.
thing that you could talk about that really outraged me was the kid that went around and started interviewing people in public schools and asking them to read out of a second grade book. What happened to him?
Well, and that's a great point, because one of the studies that came out from the Surgeon General's office is that when parents read to children, especially up to the age of kindergarten, their vocabulary tends to be 300,000 more words than a kid that's never been read to.
Wow.
So
That's
and
Can you just
most
put
of
on
the,
an Audible and let them listen to it?
well, I mean, yeah, either way, but there's two good things that come out of that. One, it instills
Spending time with the parent.
good at spending time with the parent, exactly, that connection, which is
Yeah.
very critical. And then also it creates a good habit. Now all of a sudden, it's sentimental for them to want to read a book because they did it with their parent, they did it with their father, their mother, their guardian. So those early life habits are critical for later life.
Or maybe even your second grade teacher, which is my fondest memory in
Yeah.
school. After lunch every day, I think it was in the second, maybe the third grade, maybe all the grades, at least in the early stages of grammar school, the teacher would read a book after lunch for about 30 minutes. And it was absolutely my favorite time of the day.
It makes such a difference. And it's because of the way that you interact with the media. So your character building, your story building, your it's not instant gratification. And so there's so many different ways that it impacts the brain, the mental development, that makes it so much more of a sustainable way to get knowledge. And the other thing that is scary too is that so much of that content is agenda based, and it's driven to young kids on purpose. And a lot of times parents don't even realize what kind of stuff is influencing their children. And the worst part is it could be a complete lie. That's the thing in
Yeah.
today's social media. You can take a lie or something that's falsified or exaggerated and exemplify it times millions in a second.
Are you're not thinking of Mayor Mondami by any chance, are you?
Exactly my point. Yeah,
I think that's a
exactly
good
my point.
illustration. So,
And there's no consequence, but most of the time, I mean, they can redact something, but by then the damage is done, and they know this.
so what is your background, Jay? How did you stumble upon this societal issue that you're describing?
Yeah, so my background is actually interesting. It was in science, so biotech. So I got undergrads in biotech, and then I went and got a master's from. I'm a Duke alum,
Good
and
school.
then have lived all over the world. I did a lot of different work, some government work in different places, but I lived around the world, and that's given me some really good exposure, culturally. To kind of compare what we see here at home versus other places. We just moved back from 2 years living in South Korea. Very interesting in South Korea. They've got the river that runs through the middle of the city. And on the weekends at night, they go and they set up libraries by the water with books and with
Wow.
chairs. And people by the thousands go down there and they sit by the water and they have their children and they sit and they read and they come. And it's such a beautiful thing to see that within their culture. Now, could you do that here? Someone would probably come through and want to destroy it or do something, So, but
Well,
But
why don't you do a test run and go down to the pier in Jacksonville and set up a little area with chairs and
yeah,
start to read books? Maybe
yeah,
we can, instead of fighting what the phenomenon that we're witnessing, maybe we could join it and just start. You know, there's a lady in Dallas, Texas that does very similarly to what we're describing. Her name is Jess Connell, and she is a real academician and has, in the last couple of years, really gotten obsessed with JFK's assassination. So she has gone out and acquired, and people now are sending her books every day on the JFK assassination. And on YouTube, she sits there and she selectively reads from all of these different books, and she'll put an hour show together just reading a book, and it is absolutely captivating.
yeah.
You just don't want to leave.
Those are
Maybe
the
we should
things
try it.
we do. That I absolutely agree. We need that social interaction. It's critical. 100%. I
So how's wrestling with the sycamore coming?
Yes, it's going. It's actually very. It was very fun to write. So a little bit more of my background. I'm very much an outdoorsman. Grew up on a big ranch, hunting, fishing. My dad was a Vietnam vet, and my grandfather World War II vet. So I grew up in a very much a military family. Learned a lot about the outdoors, and then a lot of that I incorporate into the book because one of the things that I think is also critical is not only getting kids reading, but also getting back to critical thinking, questioning things. And so the basis of the book is you've got a family in Florida. The father's overseas. He works in the intelligence community, which they didn't know that, but an attack happens, and all of a sudden, the family, for the first time in their life, there's no cell phones, there's no grocery stores, there's no medical facilities. They're left to try to make it on their own. And so many kids, today's kids, they can't imagine that. I grew up in a time when you didn't have a cell phone, you didn't have 24/7 communication. And so it's so alien to them. So they're trying to figure out how to survive. The father is overseas. He knows that this has happened. He's stuck. He gets actually put into a POW camp, and so he gets stuck over. And so the family are trying to figure out how to get back together. And so it makes for a very interesting dynamic because the family now, the two sons and the daughter and the mother are trying to figure out, how do we survive? The father had given them provisions. He was kind of a prepper guy, so he had given them some provisions, so they're living off of that. But they're at every point they're having to make these critical decisions, some of them life or death decisions. What do we do? How do we handle this particular situation? And I love for young readers to have to get in that, to have to put themselves in that position. What would I do? And so that's a lot of the basis of the book. It's got a very strong family-oriented component. It's got a strong military component because the father, because he works in intelligence, he has some very good connections. So he had one of his friends who was an ex-Ranger come meet his family and try to help them. So he brings a lot of experience. And so they go on this journey, which is why I say it's kind of a mix between Tom Sawyer, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and Hunger Games, because there's a survival component, but there's also an adventure component, and it makes for a great story. I've really had a lot of fun writing it. And then of course
Just listening to you tell that story sparked a reaction in me that may have been an unintended consequence. But as I was listening, it made me very grateful for what I have in life, because while, like virtually everyone to ever walk the earth, I have experienced my share of adversity, but it pales in comparison to what you were describing. So it just flashed in my brain. Gosh, I'm really lucky. I'm very fortunate. Thank you, God, for all that you've given me and what you have spared me of.
Absolutely. And there's a religious component to it.
Hmm.
There is, because one of the things that's fairly universal, when people get into despair, when they're really challenged, they look up.
Every single time. Every single time.
It's easy to be pretentious and all of that whenever you've got everything at your fingertips, but when you're desperate and you have no hope, there's only one place to turn. And I really point that out in the book.
That is so beautiful and so well spoken. It is a phenomenon that I have witnessed. I've been talking to my wife about this off and on. I'm 73 years old. I've kind of feel like I really haven't seen and done it all, but I feel like I've had, 73 full years. And so I've seen a lot. I just haven't seen it all. I've not served in the military. I've never been in the combat field. That's certainly a big chunk of a lot of people's lives that will shape them. But I've been contemplating wanting to write a book myself, and just call it Mean People. And I don't know whether it's just coincidental, but I've just witnessed a lot of mean people in the world. And a couple of things I've witnessed that seem to be in common. And this could just be my imagination, but my observation is so many of them lack faith in their lives, and they've suffered horrible tragedies. And, you always try and find meaning out of bad things that happen to people. And, the saying goes that good things or bad things can happen to good people. But my paradigm is that a lot of bad stuff happens to mean people. I can't explain why, but invariably the response is exactly as you said. They suddenly turn to God and they become more humble. How tough do lessons have to be? But I have seen that in a lot of situations. You think I'm just imagining this, or have you seen it?
No, absolutely agree. Like I said, anywhere you go in the world, when people get desperate, they look to their faith. They look to their faith, and I really wanted to make that point in the book. So, again, you take a family that is used to having everything. They've been very successful, living in the suburbs, pool in the backyard, living on the lake, all the good things, and you take all that away. What's left? What do you have to pull strength from? In a very desperate situation. So that was a core theme of the book. The other is family centric. What is the difference when you have a strong parental influence? You got a strong mom, you got a strong dad. The boys, the sons have to learn to be men, right? They have to go through this rite of passage because dad's not there. So, all of a sudden they go from sitting around playing on devices and playing with their friends in the park to having to figure out how do I support my family? How do I get through this particular situation that I'm dealing with that is life or death? An example, one of the kids slips and puts a big gash in their leg. There's no hospitals. What do you do? So many kids today have never had to deal with these types of situations. And so I really wanted to make that point. And what I find is from the readers, from the readers that have read the book, is they love it because they thrive on having to be creative thinkers and having to work through problems. A lot of times they just don't have problems to solve because everything is very good for them in their living environment, but the book gives them imagination.
I can't help but think about the fact that you're writing this in the context of an intel officer, a fallen intel officer. I mean,
Yes.
why not a pastor or a school teacher in a what do you call it, a missionary type role, or a Navy SEAL? I mean, why intel? You're not
Great question.
you're
And
not CIA, are you?
I've got I've got a good answer. So the
But
father.
you didn't answer my question.
Well, it's interesting because the father in the book he works in intel.
I know, I heard you.
And he explains a lot about what he went through to get to where he is and how his family wasn't never really allowed to know a lot of his background. But what makes the book interesting is so the attack starts in Taiwan with China. and he's there doing some intel work and gets caught in it and gets put into a camp, a POW camp. And I wanted to really bring some historical reference, because that's the other thing that kids are missing from social media. They don't get good historical reference and context. They have no idea what prisoners of war from World War II went through in Japanese prison camps. They have no idea what some of these Vietnam veterans went through.
Yes.
And so they have no idea what people have sacrificed for them to live this good life that they're living.
I repeat, why not a shot down pilot over
Yeah.
Vietnam, or why not someone fighting in Afghanistan? But you write it from you still haven't answered my question whether you were CIA.
It's because that one of the other main characters is a Navy SEAL, and he plays a very pivotal role.
You're not going to answer my question, though, are you?
Well, no. I mean,
the reason I ask is because one of the themes that keep coming up in our program is that I am hyper focused on the alphabet agencies in this country.
Yes.
And I know we're getting off track here, but I will venture there just anyway. They do an awfully lot of good.
Yes.
That gets masked over by the bad things that I think inhibit our alphabet agencies. I honestly believe that there are bad people in these agencies, and I don't know if they're rogue or sanctioned, but I think that they do horrible things that are against our Constitution or against our U.S. laws. And there's no hierarchy. There's no supervision. There are no consequences, and there's unlimited money, and they are trained to lie and cover up. And
you're going to love my book.
That repeated over and over and over again. Personally, I'm sick of it, frankly.
Yeah. You're going to love it, because I call that out, and that's another reason why I made him a part of the CIA, is because I have that philosophical discussion in the book about how he's one of the good guys trying to do good things, but there's a bad contingency.
Yes.
Yes. And he's caught because were they involved in what happened with the attack? Where, he doesn't trust his own agency.
Well, look, I have worked in a very large law firm, one of the largest law firms in Atlanta in the early 80s. I've worked for a Fortune 500 company. I've worked on a campaign for governor. Where else have I worked? I worked at Burger Chef as a kid.
Yeah.
In every one of those contexts, there were bad people.
Yeah, there was
a guy in our law firm who I looked up to. I thought he was the greatest thing since, I thought he hung the moon, only to find out later that he had ripped off some of his clients and stolen money from them out of their trust funds. Yeah. At the Fortune 500 company, there were people that were lazy, and they would undermine the mission of the company. Yeah. And so we know that in the church, we found out that there are people that have abused and molested children, which for me is a red line. I think corporal punishment, nothing less, would be appropriate for people that do that. I mean that sincerely. But so I think it would be naive of us to think that bad people don't infect.
There's bad people in my story.
Organizations. But we need accountability. At some point, the adults have got to show up in the room. And I am delivering a talk on July the 8th to the Palm Beach Christian Men's Association. I don't know why they picked me, but I'm flattered to have been asked. And the title of the talk is, "Can a Moral Nation Survive an Immoral or Amoral Government?" And I think that we are approaching that point.
I absolutely agree. I mean, there needs to be a massive cleanup, and it's happening on some levels.
Yeah. Thank you, Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, there's good people out there doing good things, and I point this out in the book. But there's a contingency who are not, and who's gonna win that battle. But I think good wins in the end. It usually does in history.
I agree.
Um, yeah. So, but yeah, no, I talk about a lot of that, and I also address some of the wokeism stuff
Mm.
because to me that's just gotten to be asinine. In the story, there's a young Marine who's surviving, and he runs into a young girl that was from South Korea that was at a boarding school, and helps her to survive. This is a girl who's never caught a fish, who was going to go to the art university in London and plays the cello, and all of a sudden now she's having to survive in a barn, and he's there and he makes it his mission to help this little girl. And so often, that we're here that men are bad or men are mean or patriarchy and all this stuff. And it's just, I just want to dispel so much of that because there's so many good people out there like this particular character in the story who wants nothing more than to help this person, this young girl, get back to her family.
Well, I think that really does express values that we should all aspire to for our country, and that we need to get back to
Yeah.
a family unit, and that should be celebrated. But you touch on a point that I give a lot of thought to, and that is the wokeism influence in our country. And, it's so nonsensical that I can't get my head around it. I mean, men playing in women's sports, tampons in boys' bathrooms, uh, legitimizing uh, abnormality, I would say. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't think that trans people, uh, I don't know that it's a choice, but I don't know that it's not a choice. So, this guy in Texas running for the United States Senate, God save us, James Talarico, wants us to believe that there are 6 genders of people. And I just consider that to be so offensive. It offends my intellect that we are to accept anything like that. Everybody knows that there's some men that have effeminate characteristics. We know that there are women who probably can whip my ass that are masculine in their demeanor. But to say that we're going to put tampons in boys' bathrooms, that we're going to allow men to play in women's sports, and that we're somehow going to create a class of people around transvestites, and we're going to push that thought process on younger people. I mean, there's some things I just don't think you do. I don't think that children need to be exposed to that. Now, if a kid's got some psychological issues going on, I mean, being an adolescent, let's just face it, is tough. Those are very difficult years. And bullying is a reality. Hell, I was bullied when I was a kid. Growing up is tough. But solving a child's problems with a sex change, I don't know how to even characterize it. It's like telling 2 sick people to get in bed together, hoping that they're going to get well. It just doesn't work. And so I ask and I'm going on that tirade to get to the point that it is so nonsensical. It is so irrational that I wonder if the puppet master somewhere is not orchestrating all of these BS beliefs and ideas, i.e., wokeism. I mean, why don't we just change wokeism to be BSism? Because that's what it is. And it feels to me that it definitely has the effect of dividing us as a country. Is it intentional? That's the question. Is somebody pushing this stuff out on us to divide the American people, making it easier for some foreign state to come in and take us?
Yeah, you would be. I think you would really appreciate how that's handled in my book and my story, because when you get into a survival situation, all that nonsensical baloney goes away. No one's fighting about their pronouns when they're just trying to figure out how they're going to survive that day and eat the next day. So, I make that point quite often in the book that some of the things that like for instance this girl in this boarding school that she had been taught to think no, don't matter anymore. It don't matter anymore. What matters is how They find a cow in a cow field and they're going to try to milk it. She's never milked a cow. She's never been near a cow. She has no idea, so all of a sudden she's having to focus on things that are real, survival, not what are my pronouns.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I get the sense that there's something very subversive that is happening in this country, because it's the only intellectual conclusion that I can draw. I mean, saying that there's 6 genders and that men should compete in women's sports, it's like, just tell me that today's really not Wednesday, that they're really 7 days of the week and you can just pick whatever day you want. I don't know. It's so illogical. I can't even come up with an appropriate metaphor to explain it. That's how absurd it is in my little
John,
brain.
To me, it's follow the money.
Yeah.
So when you convince a young kid that they need change their sex, they become a customer for life with hormone therapy and all the things. Who's benefiting from that?
Can you imagine someone being that demonic that they would do that to a child so they could profit from it?
Parents have to decide, what do they want to influence their children? And there's no reason why a parent can't say at 7:30 at night for a half an hour, you're going to put down your device and you're going to pick up a book. That's just going to be your habit. Like it or not, you're going to do it. And force kids to get into reading. And once they get the habit established, then they're going to want to, especially if they have good content. And the thing that's important about that is not just put the phone down beside the bed, because most of these kids are on chat platforms and their phones are going to be beeping, 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 beeping. So they're going to be distracted. It needs to be a separation, a level of separation. The phone stays downstairs. Go read your book. When you're done, come back. So anything that we can do to encourage that is going to be very positive, I think, in the end, culturally for the country.
Jay Ford, Rustling of the Sycamores. And we can find it where?
On Amazon.
Well, I'm going to go grab a book, start to read it. Maybe I'll take a siesta in the process. But thank you so much, Jay, for coming on with us today.
Yeah, it's a series. So this is the first book.
Oh, good. Right.
Of 3. It's on a cliffhanger. So
then we'll have you back on at least 2 more times if you'll be gracious enough to join us. We really appreciate your coming on The Truth today. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Jay.
Nice to talk to you. Okay. Bye-bye now.
As you know, we don't put our name on anything that we haven't tried and believed in. So when I tell you about Nessa's Hemp, I want you to listen up. Nessa's Hemp is a Chicago-based company that makes hemp, and it was founded by Anessa. And what she's built is really something. We're talking about clean, high-quality hemp products with no gimmicks, just real ingredients, real transparency, with real results. Whether you're dealing with stress, sleep issues, inflammation, or you just want to add something natural to your wellness routine, Nessa's Hemp has something to offer you. Head over to nessahemp.com, that's NESAS hemp.com, and check out what they've got. Use our promo code TRUTH for a discount just by being our listener. Our viewers may remember that a couple of months ago, we had on author Mike Arnold. He's written a book called Epicenter, Nigeria, Radical Islam, and the War for Global Order. We got over 2 million views just on Facebook alone with that interview. So, as Stu Leonard, the famous grocery store magnate, said, if you press a light or switch and a light comes on, keep pressing the switch. Mike, welcome back to The Truth.
Good to be here. I'll be your light switch.
All right. So, well, show us the light. What has happened in Nigeria since we spoke last?
So the genocide and the atrocities keep getting worse. More and more people are being killed, mainly Christians. And on top of that, the Nigerian government is going to great lengths to silence dissenters. People being thrown in jail, people disappearing, including one staff member of mine that we've had to take underground and smuggle out of the country. It's very dicey. They're
Wow.
also dumping money over here in the United States, at least $10 million in lobby contracts that are on paper But the rumors and the evidence are they're doing a whole lot more than that. It's major narrative war is what it comes down to. And there's really human lives on the line in this narrative war. If our government and if President Trump end up not getting a clear picture and not doing the needful, the bloodshed that will result is, I think, going to be historically unprecedented.
So where are Donald Trump and Marco Rubio on this topic on Nigeria?
Well, Donald Trump and Rubio both talked about, the need to end the Christian genocide in Nigeria, and they've done a few pinpoint bombings, which is very encouraging. But when you peel back the layers of it, it's hard to discern exactly why they picked the targets they did. It's not the groups that are doing most of the killing. And it really looks like they've been directed by their Nigerian counterparts to take out the competition to the caliphate. The groups that they've hit so far are the ones that are not loyal to the caliphate, which controls Nigeria. I'm very concerned because not only this lobby, $10 million goes a long way in lobbyists, and they've hired some really sleazy lobbyists that are very effective. But on top of that, Trump's senior advisor on this, senior advisor to Africa and the Middle East, a man named Massad Boulos, is deeply conflicted. It's documentable that his family company profits significantly from no-bid contracts issued by the president of Nigeria today. And in fact, those contracts in 2024 equaled 72% of the Nigeria's federal budget in no-bid contracts to a man named Gilbert Chiguri, and Trump's advisor provides him his heavy equipment. So Trump's advisor, senior advisor, he also happens to be Tiffany Trump's father-in-law, is coming out and repeating verbatim the talking points of the Nigerian government. And that's Trump's senior advisor. It's not good.
Trump's senior advisor on Nigeria specifically?
Africa and the Middle East.
Wow, the foxes guarding the hen house, it sounds like.
Yes.
Well, so we have actually conducted bombing exercises in Nigeria?
Yes. And on Christmas Day, they struck an ISIS stronghold in northwest Nigeria in Sokoto State and took out a number of terrorists. And then just a month or so ago, took out the number 2 man in ISIS in the world who was holed up in Nigeria, which is interesting because the Nigerian government 2 years ago specifically came out and announced they had just killed that man.
Oh,
So
really?
what they did
Kind
was
of like maybe he's sharing a room with Epstein now.
well, they gave this 2 years ago. They gave this guy the greatest gift you can give a terrorist. They declared him dead, and he hasn't been. He had a stronghold in Nigeria, and again, Trump killed him officially about a month ago.
Wow. Well, this Bola Tinubu, he's not a nice person, is he? The current president of Nigeria. As I recall, he went to a high school, so he said, that had not been built or formed when he supposedly graduated from it.
Well, yeah, his college
Just for
records.
starters.
Yeah, his college records. One of them, on one of his college records, he's a woman. On another one, it's from a school that didn't exist at the time that the certificate was printed. He was and this is known, a drug kingpin in Chicago, had to forfeit $460,000 to a federal judge and flee the country back in 1993 for being implicated in a heroin ring.
Good Lord.
Yeah, and heroin funds 37% of global jihad, and Nigeria is a major heroin trafficking through country. So that's and in fact, there's a federal judge that ordered release. There's 2,500 pages of documents, DEA documents, that were supposed to be released June 1st by a federal court order, have not been released. And the FBI and the CIA issued briefs asking they not be released. Our government is blocking the release of these documents that implicate the president of Nigeria in a heroin trafficking ring.
Jiminy Christmas. Every time I pull back the curtain and look, it just gets dirtier and messier. I mean, this is horrific that our government is giving cover to the president of Nigeria that you allege was a drug dealer and was
Oh, that's
prosecuted
proven.
in
No, there's
Chicago?
no allegation. It's in the court. What we do know and what has been released is, again, he forfeited $460,000 and had to flee the country because he was doing money laundering for a heroin trafficking ring. That's not an allegation.
God.
That's established. What? So, yeah.
So you say that he listed as a woman at some point in his college career. Now, does that mean he identified as a woman, or he just used a female alias? I mean, I'm not sure. I'm following you on that one.
Who knows? He also passed a law, or a decree, that forged transcripts can't be used to disqualify someone for public office. So he made that law. But no, the questions remain. People really don't even know what his real name is. He just sort of came in, showed up out of nowhere, and went to Chicago. Interestingly, there was a period of time in the 80s, in the same relatively small geographic area in South Chicago, there were 4 people on the make: Barack Obama, David Axelrod, President Bola Tinubu, and the Pope. And if you look at how those things intersect, for example, recently the Pope came out and said, "Oh, there's nothing to see in Africa, in Nigeria." A couple of days earlier, he had a closed-door meeting with David Axelrod before he came out and said that. And if you know the history also, it was Axelrod who advised the presidential candidate at the time who defeated the Christian president with Obama's backing. So all 4 of those intersect in a very nefarious way right there in Nigeria and in South Chicago.
That is so disappointing, but not terribly surprising. Maybe Michelle and Tinubu are somehow know each other.
Hey, maybe she's the real Tinubu, because was she a he or he is she? It's I don't really know.
Well, maybe Brigitte Macron is in that trio. I don't know.
I don't even want to go there.
I don't even want to go there. So let's talk about the lithium mines. Of all the bad stuff I've heard, this is the one that really enrages me. Explain to our listeners exactly what is happening.
Absolutely. And they're northern Nigeria and the Middle Belt, where this violence is mostly taking place, is a very rich mineral area, and it's the minerals of the future, the minerals that power your phone and your electric car.
Yes.
So lithium is a big one, californium and other rare earth elements, and tin. I never knew it, but tin is actually worth more the ore than lithium, because all the little circuit boards and all the microcircuits use the tin. So that's a future mineral as well, with value in today's economy. And if you map the terror map where these attacks are taking place, it overlaps very conspicuously with the mineral map. And what I was up there. I was in the Middle Belt not long after the Christmas massacre in this community of Bokos, and one of the local high-level leaders said, "What do you see?" And I looked, and there's mountains of dirt where these Christians used to live. And this the strip mining. They after they're cleared off the land through massacre and displacement. Then the Chinese come in. I can tell you where their headquarters is in this community. I can tell you who the leader is in this community of that little segment. They come in and they strip mine it. It's all illegal, and they pay the jihadis. This is documented. The Nigerian government even admits this. They pay rent and they pay protection to the jihadis, and they clear the land, and the Chinese come and loot the minerals. At the very minimum, the Nigerian government had to document for this group, the international regulatory construct that they're in. They have to do an audited report, and they admitted that $9 billion a year is being looted from this region of lithium, gold, and other rare earth elements and such.
Well, so surely somebody's getting filthy rich off this, right? Those
Absolutely.
property owners must be driving around in Rolls Royce and Mercedes like the oil folks in Saudi Arabia. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple aspects of that. First of all, there's no doubt, and again, comes from on the ground, me with boots on the ground there, talking to these people, that a lot of this goes up the pipeline to pay off the generals and the military, who always show up late and who always block the local citizens from defending themselves and from pursuing the attackers. The military is on the surface, I mean, it's clearly complicit in what's going on. That's a lot of the blood mineral money, and then it flows up to the capital, to the politicians. It's a wash in blood mineral money. Interestingly, it was President Goodluck Jonathan in his living room that originally told me to look into the blood minerals in 2024. So I mean, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is known. Now, the other thing, there are now at least 8 black flag jihad groups that have assembled and have staged and are operating in this region. You got Al Qaeda, ISIS, Boko Haram, and you just go down the list. And they generate their income off of their domain. So the blood mineral racket is part of that. The heroin trafficking is part of that, and then modern day slavery, a huge part of that. Today that they sell the slaves back as ransom. The ones that the family can pay. They get more that way. Otherwise, they sell them into slavery. It's a huge slave center, and those are the side hustles of these jihad groups. Like Mohammed would attack the camel caravans. That's their, and my calculations, and it's fairly well documented, they're generating about $3 billion a year just for the jihad groups through these various side hustles, which is
so
a lot of AK-47s.
So what does happen to the property owners, the people whose land they are strip mining? How do they get hold of the land?
Well, they go in there and they kill them. They go in there and they burn the villages, burn the churches. They rape the women. They sell them into sex slavery. And the ones they don't kill and abduct, the flee as displaced. That's why there's 10 to 12 million displaced across Nigeria today. There were effectively 0 displaced in 2010 when I started going to Nigeria. So yeah, they just drive them off the land. They clear the people off through jihad, and then the Chinese come and extract the minerals. And Nigeria is not unique to that. I mean, it happens all over the world, but Nigeria is the capital of it because it's so big.
Well, where's the rest of the civilized world? Is the EU concerned about what's happening in Nigeria? What about Middle Eastern countries that are well settled? I mean, and you talked about the United States. It sounds like that Trump and Rubio are getting bad information. Where I guess what I'm asking, and it sounds like the Pope may even be compromised. Who's going to save Nigeria and the people of Nigeria?
It's in God's hands. There's a handful of us doing everything we can. I've given my life to this, and I was prepared to give my life for it. If you remember back last October when I was invited to be the Jane Fonda of Nigeria, and I at the press conference after my stooge tour, instead of smiling and nodding, I told the truth. And that's what blew this whole thing up to begin with. I was told that they might kill me for that. And there's a handful of us that are shouting, and just did a briefing day before yesterday in Washington, D.C. And one of the lobby firms, the $9 million contract, one of their people was there, and they've been doing hit pieces on me, since then, trying to discredit me. I just got a call from a Nigerian businessman who lives in the United States. He posted a picture with me months and months ago before anybody knew me, but now the government is trying to detain him and shut him down and confiscate his wealth because he's associated with me and I'm speaking the truth. One other person before me that spoke this truth publicly is now serving a life sentence in the Caliphate prison. Convicted under a law that didn't exist, illegally abducted from a foreign country. He's a British citizen, but he spoke against this caliphate, and now he's serving a life sentence.
Would you even contemplate going back to Nigeria at this point?
Oh yeah, but they won't let me in. There's no doubt I'm blacklisted. I've been called out publicly by the president of Nigeria, by the Sultan of Sokoto, by the Imam to Boko Haram. I'm a marked man. But I'd go back if I could get in. Why not?
I would be worried that you could get in, but you couldn't get out.
That's what I thought was going to happen last time. But now I have such a profile. If they did something like that, that would certainly blow the whole thing up. There's no way they could. I don't think they could endure the public awareness. So if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But it's so conflicted, even in the movement itself. There's people that are supplying equipment to the Nigerian government in the middle of all this, and they're calling themselves, missionaries. It's insane.
Well, again, is there any government in the world that is focused on the people of Nigeria and who want to try and free them from this tyranny?
No, I haven't seen it. And this is historical. I recently posted, there was a classified document written by Henry Kissinger when he was in the government under Nixon. And it was classified for 15 years. And it just speaks, what was up to then unspoken. And it says, look, the developed world is running out of minerals and resources. Africa is full of them. The problem is there's people there. And so for when we do our extraction and do what we're doing, it's going to generate all these disaffected people. And we need to figure out how to reduce their population so that it doesn't become a problem. And the policy was how to keep these people down, how to reduce their population through any means necessary so that they don't get in the way of us extracting their minerals. That's generally the foreign policy across the planet and has been for a couple hundred years. Let's
Such a shame.
Yeah,
that really cost a lot of time, energy, and money to do that. What a great story someone could tell if they had taken just the opposite and help these people prosper because of their minerals, help them extract it in an environmentally friendly way, allowed the people to profit off their assets, and develop Nigeria into a thriving, affluent country. It just seems very evil based on the way that you're describing it.
It's pure evil.
Anybody would think like this.
It's pure evil. And when you realize, like, for example, so it was the 1880s, the Berlin Conference, when Europe got together without one African person present and carved up Africa like a Christmas turkey. Okay, you get the wing and you get the breast and that's where the boundaries of most of the nations are drawn is from that. And so the British went in to Nigeria, found this bloodthirsty caliphate. The Sokoto Caliphate is the largest enslaver of free Africans in the history of the world. And it's still at it today. And it's a jihad, genocidal caliphate founded explicitly by the founder to be the launch pad for the Mahdi, the prophesied jihad messiah that's going to conquer the world. And that's what is the foundation of the caliphate that is still taught today, that's revered. That's the purpose. And the British found that. They didn't conquer it. They didn't undo it. They rebranded it, and they used it as their enforcers and their deal makers. The civilization in the South, very advanced. Wherever those people relocate, they rise to the very top. Wealthiest, most educated United States is Nigerians from the South and the Southeast. And they have such amazing potential, but the British shackled them to this caliphate, gave control to the caliphate. And this was 1960. So when they tried to split away, when the Southeast tried to split, they didn't even try to get independence at first. They just wanted to be left alone. That's where the oil is. Then they just said, leave our people alone, let us do our thing, and you can have the oil. But that wasn't good enough. With British backing between 1967 and 1970, while our kids were smoking weed at Woodstock, they starved to death some 3 million, mostly children, to retain control of the oil.
You're saying the British did that?
The British did that, fully documented, and you can't talk about it, but they've extracted some $2 trillion in resources since independence in 1960. And again, look it up, Biafran War. They starved to death. They were shooting down Red Cross aid planes who were trying to bring food to these children. Starved to death, and the settled number, some observers say up to 5 million. And the official sterilized version says 1 million, which is as if that's okay. But the settled number, about 3 million starved to death in 30 months so the British could keep the oil and so the caliphate could keep control. And that's historical fact. This is, when you put that all together, the longest running genocide on the face of the earth since the founding of the caliphate in 1804 to today. They're still in control, same throne, same bloodline, same doctrine, same tactics, beheading, rape, murder, all this stuff. Same tactic. All of it's the same, unbroken, 222 years, and it's on par with the German Holocaust in gross numbers.
My gosh, and it's happening right in real time, and it sounds like nobody cares. I mean, where is the leadership? Where is the morality to stop this? But you're describing a country that has got all the ingredients of a demonic state: slavery, genocide, thievery, corruption. I mean, how much worse does it have to get before someone stands up and takes notice? And when I say someone, I'm talking about a government that has the ability to intervene.
That's interesting exercise. One, it's been suppressed and denied for so long. For example, what I've talked about, the genocide that happened in 67 to 70, that was the breakaway nation was called Biafra. You can't say that word in Washington. They will shut you down. You can't say that in Great Britain. It's in our lifetimes, a genocide. 3 million, mostly children, starved to death, and you can't talk about it. We just don't go there. The wrong side won. It's as if the Nazis won World War II, and you can't talk about this Holocaust thing because that's who's in control, and they have the oil and they have the minerals, and our foreign policy at the time, we knew about it. The U.S. knew about it and called it, it's an internal matter. It's an internal affair because we had oil contracts too.
Well, so was Iran. That was an internal matter. I mean, they killed 43,000 of their own citizens just since January of this year. That was part of the justification for us going in. We went into Venezuela because Maduro was there, and he was perceived to be a evil leader that killed people and also engaged in the heroin trade. We ran China out of the Panama Canal. I mean, why don't we show some resolve and a backbone and help these helpless people in Nigeria?
Because we're complicit. Obama unleashed the current jihad that's what is flared up since 2013, 2014. He poured fuel on that on purpose because they had a Southern Christian president who was pushing back against the caliphate. And he blocked our aid in the fight against terror. He blocked Nigeria from going to other nations that tried to go to Israel, South Africa. He blocked that. He very openly telegraphed support for the Muslim warlord challenger, brutal dictator who had called for global Sharia law. Obama backed him. David Axelrod was his campaign advisor. And we got this guy elected, defeated, took the office. Don't know if he really won. You know how that goes. And then our Secretary of State, John Kerry, flies to Sokoto, not the capital. He flies to the seat of the caliphate and congratulates the Sultan after the election. That was what Obama did. He handed it to them. And so how do we come back from that? So, whoops, sorry, folks. Now we're going to fix it. We've been complicit in this from day one. We looked the other way when 3 million of your children were killed. There's people still alive today whose children starved to death in their arms. How do you say, oh, sorry, now we're here to help? How are they going to trust us?
So how large of a landmass is Nigeria? I mean, can you compare it to a U.S. state? I mean, is it bigger than Texas?
Texas. It's the size of Texas.
The size of Texas with 100 million people?
It has about 230 thereabouts million people. Very fast growing. Average age is 18.2. They're on track to be the third largest nation on earth by 2050.
My gosh. And they're rich in minerals and natural resources. So it should be a very prosperous state. It's just so disappointing that people are abusing the citizens of Nigeria to the extent that they have. All right. Well, you've made us upset. You've made us ill. Can you make us well? What's the where is the source of optimism? How is this going to get turned around? And when is the humanitarian aid going to come, and from what corner?
Well, as I said, it's in the hands of the Lord. There's people doing everything we can to raise awareness, raise the alarm, and getting. I just had to turn a death threat over to the FBI. Ambassador Sam Brownback told me I need to start carrying because my life's in danger for speaking the truth. And we just need to keep raising awareness. Light pierces the darkness. Darkness doesn't exist. It's the absence of light. And we must keep shining a light and keep speaking truth. There is no politician that's going to burn up their political capital to go against the world's powers that be to do something there unless there's an outcry from their constituents. It's just not going to happen. Never has happened that way. We need to keep raising awareness. We need to keep doing what you're doing right here and talking about it. We need the narrative war that's raging right now is going to decide not only the fate of Nigeria, but I believe largely the fate of the world, because this trajectory, Nigeria, top 5 member of OPEC, $1 trillion in minerals, on track to be the 3rd largest nation on earth by 2050, very vibrant nation. Today, the man that's in charge, appointed by President Tinubu, the man that's in charge of rewriting their national curriculum, every grade level, every subject. This man, his sole claim to fame, he is the top scholar for the Boko Haram philosophy. He considers it intellectual jihad to purge Western thought. His manifesto is called The Islamization of Knowledge. That's who's writing the curriculum now, every grade level, every subject, for 50 million Nigerian children. Their military, they just signed a training agreement with Turkey. Turkey uses the Sadat group as their African outfit. Sadat, the founder of Sadat, said he founded it to prepare the way for the Mahdi. And they recruit trainers from active ISIS fighters in Syria. That's who's training Nigerian special forces, is to prepare for the Mahdi, ISIS fighters. There's about 12 million displaced with a 50 to 60% chance of being radicalized. And then at the same time, there's 10 to 15 million Almajiri in northern Nigeria, which are boys that have been given to the imam to raise in the madrasa, being fed nothing but jihad ideology. So we have 12 to 15 million Almajiri, as many as 50 to 60% of 12 million displaced. And then you have the public school system there, all being fed radical ideology. This is a ticking time bomb, unprecedented. If they are able to retain control and endure Trump's gaze, the pushback is going to make that Biafran genocide look like a warm-up. And their stated intention, the prophetic purpose, is to use Nigeria as a launch pad for global jihad. And we better start taking this seriously. It's not a religious persecution issue. This is vital national security.
Well, do you have allies that you're working with? I mean, you're not fighting this battle solely alone, are you?
It feels that way sometimes. The people that you think are allies sometimes aren't.
Are there any allies in Congress?
So Trump put Congressman Riley Moore as his point of contact on Nigeria. From everything I can tell, a decent man, no doubt about it. He's a freshman congressman, and he's just new to this. He did a little quick tour over there, came back and made these recommendations. And he's come out and said, I'm so glad to be working with the Nigerian government.
Have you had an opportunity to meet and speak with him?
I'm trying, but when $9 million in lobbyists and conflicted advisors make it difficult sometimes.
What state is he from?
West Virginia.
I see. Well, I'm so grateful to you and enamored with the work that you're doing. And I hope that you will, I'm sure you're going to stick with it. I hope that you will get traction and find success. The 230 million people certainly need a savior. What's the attitude of the Nigerian people?
So that's a good question. I didn't circle back on that, on the hope side of it. So these civilizations, these nations, really that the British lumped all together, remarkable history. the Southeast, for example, the Igbo, they were producing sophisticated lost wax cast bronzes in the 800s when Europe was still in the Dark Ages, in rough Iron Age. They were doing sophisticated bronzes. They had a very egalitarian, consensus-based form of government. One of the walled cities in Nigeria has bigger wall than the Great Wall of China. Amazing works. They had written language long before a lot of the premier nations of the world today did. And their people, even today, when they resettle, they become the elite. They rise to the top. They have so much potential. It really could be like a Wakanda. And the population is about evenly split, Muslim and Christian. But even a lot of the Muslims are victims of this caliphate. They've killed about a third of the victims of this genocide are Muslims who won't join the jihad. So there is a base there that could rise up and really build something wonderful. Right now, Nigerian diaspora from the United States sends back about $20 billion a year. And all the ones that I've talked to said, yeah, we would relocate back there in a heartbeat to build this great nation if they're just given a chance. And there are steps Trump could take today that could make that happen. But will he? I don't know.
Well, I hope he or someone in his circle has watched our program on Nigeria with you, Mike. And I certainly think that it is a policy and a foreign policy that our own government should have a dramatic interest in, because we say we stand for protecting humanity, and this is a good place to start based on what I've learned in a very short period of time. So thank you so much for coming on, and I hope you will continue to come back and keep us informed and help you in your quest to free these people.
Thank you. Anytime. This is Africa. There's no place on earth that's been raped, looted, extracted from, dumped on, divided than Africa. And it has been like that for centuries. And you see what's happening in Great Britain today. That's just the chickens coming home to roost. I hate to say it, but they're reaping what they've sown. And it's happening here. Somebody has to have the courage to stand up and repent and say, we've done this, but we're going to help fix it now.
Yeah,
it needs to happen, because you can't keep sweeping it under the rug. The longer the truth is suppressed, the more explosive it is when it comes out, and the more the darkness grows. And at some point, we have to realize that this policy that we've been pursuing from day one is going to kill us if we don't reverse course. And that needs to happen. It needs to happen very soon. Sounds
like sage advice and a good concept to end our interview on today. Mike, thank you so much once again. Mike Arnold has authored the book, Epicenter, Nigeria, Radical Islam, and the War for Global Order. I love the concept, global order. It sounds like we could start right in Nigeria. Thank you again, Mike, and continue to do God's work.
Thank you. Thank you, brother.
I hope you enjoyed our interview with Mike Arnold. He is a courageous individual, and he shared with me off camera. He alluded to it in the interview that one of his associates chose to speak truth to the powerful in Nigeria. He is now fleeing the country in order to save his own life. If you're as moved by the story as I am, and, I kept asking Mike, who are your allies? Who's helping you in this effort? And it sounded to me that Mike is one of very few people around the globe that are really focused on what's happening in Nigeria. If you would like to help Mike and his cause, you can donate to AfricaAriseusa.org. That's AfricaAriseusa.org. I've sent my donation, and I hope that you'll send yours. And that is the truth, and I'm John Gordon. Do you ever grind through the day like I do? You need that perfect kick without the jitters? Grab some Bone Frog Coffee. They're our studio sponsor. And best of yet, they are veteran-owned, founded by retired Navy SEAL Tim Cruikshank as a tribute to his fallen teammates in the Naval Special Warfare community. Each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special operations. If you don't already know it, the Bone Frog is a sacred symbol of SEAL teams that represent those that gave their lives in combat and is a reminder of the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom and the American way of life. Every bag, premium, small batch, roasted from top shelf Arabica beans. Smooth, low acid, no Robusta junk. Think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or the classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup. And here's the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes straight to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families. They're aiming to raise $500,000. Coffee with a cause? Yeah, that's not a slogan. It's brotherhood brewed daily. Head to bonefrogcoffee.com, snag some K-Cups, whole beans, or merchandise. Use the promo code TRUTH. Start your day like I do. Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our vets and thank Bone Frog for sponsoring our studio. Check them out now at bonefrogcoffee.com. That's www.bonefrogcoffee.com. Happy July 4th to you and your family. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're going to be able to barbecue some hot dogs and hamburgers, maybe even some baby back ribs. I know I'm looking forward to the rest of the day, and we've got 2 of our 3 sons here, so we hope to be able to celebrate in a grand fashion. Today's show is brought to you by our studio sponsor, Bone Frog Coffee. It's a company founded to help vets and to produce really good tasting coffee. We have a beautiful studio, and we appreciate Bone Frog helping sponsor it. We've even got the glass cage back there where producer Anthony hangs out. And so we are also brought to you by 2 other sponsors, namely Nessa's Hemp. We'll talk about that more later. And also Masculine Essentials, an important part of every man's start to the day. So thank you for joining us. And we've got a packed show for you today. We're going to hear from Elliot Greenberg. He is the owner of Masculine Men. We had a great conversation about today's young people, and they're starting to gravitate back towards thinking about the way they're looking, both in their physical appearance, their hygiene, and the clothing that they wear. They call it looks maxing, and the whole goal is to ascend. So we talked about that with Elliot Greenberg, and then we're going to have Jay Ford. He's the author of Rustling of the Sycamore. So, folks, today, I really gave a lot of thought to what to do with today's show. And the kind of knee-jerk reflexive reaction was, let's get some veterans, some heroes that we could have on the show, and really talk about the 4th of July and what it means. That's compelling. The fact of the matter is, on reflection, I just decided that you're going to have opportunities to hear that, receive that information from so many sources, including the 250th anniversary celebration in Washington and other parts of the country, and speakers galore. So, at the risk of being a downer, which is not my intent, I've decided to go in a different direction. And I'm going to talk to you about some really serious stuff. And many of these are recurring themes on the truth. But I think that it is of such an importance. And I think that the 4th of July, whereas I'm not intending to in any way interfere with the celebration, but it's an appropriate time to reflect on where we are as a country and how can we sustain our country well into the future. So I've titled today's monologue, Can a Moral Nation Survive an Immoral Government? I believe the answer is yes, but only if moral men refuse to remain silent. Only if we see the pattern clearly and act upon it. So I'm going to discuss some controversial and maybe even uncomfortable topics today. So I can ask you to simply adopt an open mind. Now, a lot of these things we've talked about many times before on The Truth, but never all in one sitting. So it's going to be a little long, but stick with me. I think we've got a pretty good monologue for you today with lots of clips from important sources. So you can watch us now on social media platforms that you may gravitate towards. We're on Getter, Rumble, YouTube, X, Facebook, and Instagram. So if you use any of those platforms, you can go there right now, and you will be able to watch the video production of today's Truth, complete with video of the clips that we're going to air. If you otherwise would just like to listen to us on the radio or across the web or on the apps, you're welcome to do that too. We come to you every Saturday and Sunday on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We are also on cdm.press. They take our feed and redistribute it on their social media platforms, which include many of the ones I just mentioned. You can also download on the App Store the John Fredericks radio app and listen to us on your smartphone anywhere in the world, really, if you have a worldwide web connection. That's otherwise known as the internet. But on Getter, which I particularly like, you can interact with us in the live chat, and you can tell me what you think. I would really like to hear from you, actually, during the broadcast today. And we'll read your comments, respond to them if we have time. And we'll certainly reflect on them after the broadcast. So join us on Getter if you would like. Look for the live button, search for John Gordon Truth. We're right there waiting on you. So let's look at this notion of a moral people against an immoral government. Throughout Scripture, God's people have faced this question. The Hebrews under Pharaoh, the early Christians under Rome, the faithful under tyranny, and in each case, the answer was the same. Moral people must stand, must resist, and must not be willing or allowed to be overcome by evil. What I'm going to talk to you about today, ladies and gentlemen, most of it, if not all, is pure, unadulterated evil. So let's start with a familiar topic on The Truth, and that is the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Many people today still rely on the government's narrative, especially the Warren Commission, which we now know is a complete and utter farce. How do we know that? Where is the most tangible evidence of that? Well, I'll tell you. In 1979, and the mainstream media, damn them, don't report this. But in 1979, the House Select Committee on Assassinations completed its investigation into President Kennedy's death. They used acoustic analysis of police recordings. The committee concluded with a high probability, with over a 95% certainty, that there were two gunmen in Dealey Plaza on that fateful day. This is the United States Congress in a bipartisan commission concluded that. We're not told that when the mainstream media talks about the assassination. They only talk about Oswald. Two gunmen means a conspiracy. Two gunmen mean the official narrative, the Warren Report, is false. Robert Kennedy Jr., the President John Kennedy's nephew, has stated publicly that the evidence is overwhelming that the CIA was involved in his uncle's assassination. So does Tucker Carlson. Kennedy Jr. has said that his father's first call after JFK's assassination was to the CIA official, and he asked, "Did your people do this?" The forensic evidence presents serious questions. Lee Harvey Oswald had no paraffin on his hands or body an hour and a half after the assassination, a test that would have indicated if he had in fact fired a rifle. His fingerprints were absent on the rifle that was allegedly used. His fingerprints were absent in the sniper's nest. I'm here to tell you that if Lee Harvey Oswald was tried by a jury of his peers, there is no way in my mind, as having been a member of the bar since 1979, that he could have been convicted of murder. I think that the evidence of his innocence is overwhelming. Much of it is true, admittedly, circumstantial, but nevertheless, the volume of circumstantial evidence is significant. So let me give you another little tidbit. There was a guy named Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was vice president of the United States then, and he was under investigation in the state of Texas for illegally claiming cotton subsidies with a business associate of his. So the Commissioner of Agriculture was actually investigating LBJ and Billy Saul's Estes, the business associate. And so one day at his golf course, the agricultural commissioner was gunned down in cold blood. There were many eyewitnesses, and it wasn't too long after his killing, his death, his murder, that a guy named Mac Wallace was arrested. Now, Mac Wallace was known to have a relationship with Lyndon Baines Johnson. In fact, people considered Mac Wallace LBJ's cleanup guy, the guy who handled the dirty stuff. Well, Mac Wallace was convicted of murder by 12 men and women in a jury trial. Guess whose fingerprint was in the sniper's nest from JFK's assassination? Mac Wallace. So why does this matter? Because Lyndon Baines Johnson, in that investigation, that he basically, the belief is that he had the agricultural commissioner bumped off. And when Mac Wallace was convicted, the judge, who also had ties to LBJ, released him from custody and rendered that his sentence was limited to time served. So a guy that was convicted of murder by 12 men and women in an unanimous verdict was allowed to walk out of the courthouse. And then sometime later, his fingerprint shows up in the school book depository in the sniper's nest. I'll let you connect the dots. Oswald said when he was captured, "I'm just a patsy." And he was killed before his trial. The case was closed, and the American people were told to accept the official story. Let's look at clip 2. Did we miss clip 1, Andy or Anthony? Oh, darn. All right, well, what was clip 1? All right, let's roll Tucker's take on the JFK assassination, and then we'll go and run clip 2.
Did the CIA have a hand in the murder of John F. Kennedy, an American president? And here's the reply we received verbatim. Quote, "The answer is yes. I believe they were involved. It's a whole different country from what we thought it was. It's all fake. It's hard to imagine a more jarring response than that. Again, this is not a, quote, conspiracy theorist that we spoke to. Not even close. This is someone with direct knowledge of the information that once again is being withheld from the American public. And the answer we received was unequivocal. Yes, the CIA was involved in the assassination of the president.
Now, have been told that we have to accept the official story, and if you don't, you were labeled a fringe conspiratorialist. People like Jim Garrison, who was a prosecutor in New Orleans who investigated the Kennedy assassination, was ridiculed and maligned. And Mark Lane, an author who wrote A Rush to Judgment, was similarly discredited and labeled a publicity seeker. Then, of course, the journalist Dorothy Kilgallen. She died after having interviewed Jack Ruby in his jail cell in Dallas. She came home to New York and told her friend that she was going to blow the lid off the JFK assassination. She was found dead the next morning in her apartment in New York. She was dressed for dinner with her makeup on, lying not in her bed, but in the bed of her guest bedroom with barbiturates strewn around her. Kind of reminds you of Marilyn Monroe, doesn't it? All of her notes of her interview and her research on the JFK assassination were gone, never to have been seen since. Now, here's what a United States Army colonel had to say about this. And he, by the way, was Colin Powell's chief of staff. Roll two.
I was at Baylor University at that time, and I remember when the announcement was made, I was absolutely stunned. Me and my roommate could barely talk for about a half an hour. The president's just been shot not too far from us. We were in Waco. And then we were on the TV, and we watched this guy walk up to Ruby and shoot him right there. And we, at that moment, Bob and I said to ourselves, this stinks. This really stinks.
Yeah. When the lone gunman kills the lone gunman, they're probably not lone gunmen.
Nah, you got it.
Well, it was a dark day in America. I think it was the day America lost its innocence. I think it is the day that we began a steep moral decline. And we're still, I think, paying for it because we have conveyed to every bureaucrat, government worker, that if you have power, you can literally commit murder in this country and get away with it with impunity. Now, here's how Tucker sums it all up.
Now, some people will not be surprised to hear that. They suspected it all along. But no matter how you feel about or what you thought about the Kennedy assassination, pause to consider what this means. It means that within the U.S. government, there are forces wholly beyond democratic control. These forces are more powerful than the elected officials that supposedly oversee them. These forces can affect election outcomes. They can even hide their complicity in the murder of an American president. In other words, they can do pretty much anything they want. They constitute a government within a government, mocking by their very existence the idea of democracy. As cynical as we have become after 30 years of watching government officials ignore the voters who employ them, we were shocked to learn this. It's not acceptable. Americans have trusted their government less with every passing year since the killing of John F. Kennedy. Maybe this is why.
Well, there's no doubt. And that plays directly into my thesis that it has only gotten worse. And John F. Kennedy was really just the beginning of what has become a long line of tragedies, disasters that, for me, reek of intel having their fingerprints all over it. What am I talking about? Let's contemplate the death of Senator Robert F. Kennedy. Just 5.5 years after I witnessed Walter Cronkite coming on the national news and pronouncing JFK dead, I walked out to my parents' car early in the morning, and 5.5 years later, and started the car, turned on the radio, and I was shocked to learn that the night before, Bobby Kennedy had been killed in a hotel in Los Angeles just after having won that state's nomination for president of the United States. He won in a clean sweep. He got all the delegates. That was the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. We are told that Sirhan acted alone, according to the official narrative. Sirhan that night was in fact in the kitchen where Kennedy was killed, and he carried an 8-shot revolver. But here's where things get dicey. Ballistic evidence tells a far different story. Witnesses report that more than 8 shots were fired in that kitchen, up to as many as 13 shots, according to many accounts. Sirhan's gun, remember, only contained 8 bullets. And get this, all 8 bullets were recovered and accounted for. None of them struck Bobby Kennedy. If more than 8 shots were fired, there was a second gunman. The fatal shot came from behind Bobby Kennedy. Sirhan was in front of him and was wrestled to the ground by bystanders. Bobby Kennedy's closest friend, Paul Schrade, who stood beside him during the shooting, was himself struck by a bullet, and he said unequivocally that the shots came from behind, not from Sirhan's position. Now, here is Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s summary of his dad's own death.
The second, and Paul Schrade, incidentally, I tell you, the punchline, called me and said, I don't know, 10 years ago, and said, I want you to come to my house and read the autopsy report on your dad. This, you can imagine, the last thing in the world that I ever wanted to do. But I couldn't say no to him because he had taken a bullet for my father. And he was a good friend, so I went and talked to him. And he showed me the autopsy report and then, a lot of other information. But essentially, after reading that, it was impossible for me to believe that Sirhan had killed my dad, and I'll tell you why. Sirhan fired 2 shots at my father. The first one, he hit my father, put Paul Schrade in the head. The second one hit a door jamb, a wooden door jamb behind my father, and was later removed from that door jamb by the LAPD. At that point, he was grabbed. It was a crowded room. There's 77 people in the room, in the kitchen. And he was standing in front of a steam table. My father was 5 feet in front of him. My father never turned his back. All kinds of eyewitnesses. He was grabbed by 6 men, including Rayford Johnson, who I've talked to about it, Rosie Greer, who was part of the fearsome foursome, the Oakland Raiders, and 4 other guys, men, and they piled on top of him. Rayford Johnson said to me, Sirhan is a little tiny guy, and almost feeble looking. I mean, today he's feeble looking. And I spent about 3 hours with him in jail, sitting in the prison with him. These men took his hand, the first thing they did, and pointed away from my father. But Rayford Johnson said, toward the other end of the room, Rayford Johnson said to me, Rayford Johnson was the decathlon champion in 1960, a huge guy, super strong, and he said, this little man had superhuman strength, and I could not get the gun away from him. And he emptied the revolver. It was a revolver. He emptied it. He had 8 shots in it, and he never reloaded. And he shot 6 times in the other direction. All 6 of those bullets hit people. 5 of them, one of them went through one guy's clothing, and another, it also wounded his leg. He hit people in the stomach, we know what happened to every one of those bullets, right? That's 8 bullets. We know what happened to every one of them. My father, the autopsy report shows, was shot 4 times from behind. And they were contact shot. One of them went through, one of them did not hurt him, but went through the shoulder pad of his jacket. The other ones all hit him. And the last one, which was the most fatal, was right behind his ear, an inch from his ear, but with the barrel touching his skin. And the other ones were all contact shots, meaning that they were within probably a half an inch of his skin and clothing, and they left carbon tattoos on his skin. And Sirhan was never behind my father. And there was many, many eyewitnesses.
Well, yet another case was closed. Another inconvenient Kennedy was removed from power, and the narrative was established. We were told to believe it, and if we didn't, we were right-wing fringe conspiratorialist. It wasn't long after Bobby Kennedy was struck down that America lost another treasure, Martin Luther King Jr. He advocated for peace and desegregation and harmony. Well, we've been told that James Earl Ray was the lone assassin on April the 4th, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, on the balcony of a hotel where MLK had just spent the night. And, but what the mainstream media does not tell you is that in 1999, the King family brought a civil case in Memphis, Tennessee. After 4 weeks of testimony and over 70 witnesses, a jury of 12 men and women rendered their unanimous verdict and concluded that Dr. King was not the victim of James Earl Ray, but rather a conspiracy that involved Lloyd Jowers and others, including government assets. The civil jury verdict was clear. The King family has stood behind it. Coretta Scott King, his now late widow, stated publicly, "There is abundant evidence of a major high-level conspiracy in the assassination of my husband." Yet the official narrative persists to this day. James Earl Ray acted alone. A jury of 12 men and women heard the evidence and said otherwise, but the government story remains in place. When we interviewed Dr. Alveda King, Dr. King's niece, right here on The Truth, she had this to say about her uncle's assassination. Roll tape 5.
It was just like there was no lone killer of my dad, Reverend A.D. King, who was killed in 1969 and thrown into a swimming pool. There was no water in his lungs, and yet they say he drowned. So with the three, Martin Luther King Jr. shot, A.D. King choked and thrown in the pool, Mama King shot. And they would like for us to believe that those were all random acts, totally separate by crazy people. A woman stabbed Martin Luther King Jr. in 1958 in Madison Square Garden in the chest, a Black woman. The man who shot my grandmother was Black. So, yeah. So all of this is connected and related.
Dr. King's words have the ring of truth. All right, let's move on to another U.S. tragedy. On September the 11th, 2001, the Twin Towers collapsed in New York City. The Twin Towers were struck by aircraft. But what has not been talked about or really studied very closely in the public domain is that there was a third building that fell several hours after the Twin Towers collapsed. It was known as Building 7. A 47-story office tower collapsed without being struck by any airplanes It burned for less than an hour before falling into its own perfectly outlined footprint. Well, Congressman Kurt Weldon, who served on the House Armed Services Committee, is a former firefighter and had been in Congress for, I think, 10 or 12 years before they ran him out because he questioned this official narrative. He has concluded unequivocally that Building 7 was brought down in a controlled demolition. He is joined by other firefighters, architects, and structural engineers who have examined the evidence. They reached the same conclusion. The free fall collapse in the manner that it did was most likely an implosion. The way the building fell into itself, these are not consistent with structural failures from fire alone. Buildings burn for hours around the world without collapsing. Yet this building, which burned for an hour, collapsed perfectly. The steel was sold for scrap and shipped overseas almost immediately, removing the evidence. And no serious investigation was permitted to challenge the official conclusion. Now here's former Congressman Kurt Weldon.
Congressman, what part of the evidence that you saw in the documentary 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out hit you the most, was the most compelling for you? Or well, 2 or 3 of them?
The visuals of the collapse of the Building 7 obviously was just overwhelming. I never paid attention to it. And I was there. I was at ground zero within 2 days of the event happening. The visual evidence that you have and the fact that they never allowed any forensic work to be done on the steel, that the steel was moved so quickly where it could not be analyzed. I never knew that. I never realized that. That message from that New York official on the 78th floor, that's very personal to me because I understand that situation of being on the floor and saying, okay, we can handle this. And then an entire building collapses? No, that's not, I'm not an engineer, but that's not common sense. And there's something else at play here, and we need to know what that is. We need to understand it. If we're going to be a nation based upon the truths of this nation, we need to make sure that the facts are as they should be.
Amen. And my simple question to our listeners is that if you accept that Kurt Weldon and others are correct and that Building 7 resulted from a controlled demolition, then what else might be true? Well, Jeffrey Epstein is the story that won't go away. He operated for decades with apparent protection from federal authorities. When a South Florida prosecutor, Alexander Acosta, was asked during his Senate confirmation hearing why he had given Epstein such a lenient plea deal, the account emerged. He related that he was told that Epstein belonged to Intel and to leave it alone. Here's Tucker Carlson's take. Let's roll clip 7.
His previous cellmate, he said, tried to kill him. Then he was alone, and then the cameras, for some reason, were turned off, and the 2 guards who were supposed to be watching were asleep. And clearly one of the other inmates killed him. And we know this for a bunch of different reasons, including the fact that somebody dressed him in different clothes before bringing him down to the prison infirmary.
But I'm sorry, there's no evidence of this, right?
Oh, it's definitely evidence of it, for sure, because the story that they are telling
that's
is
not
inconsistent.
The official story, no?
No, the official story is that he hung himself with a bed sheet. But the medical examiner who was hired by his brother, who was in the autopsy, said conclusively, having done autopsies on suicide victims in prison throughout New York State for 40 years, that this guy was strangled. That is not a ligature mark consistent with being hung. That is someone being strangled with the cord to his CPAP machine. Meanwhile, the medical examiner who wrote the official report concluded that it was, quote, inconclusive I mean, if you're interested in this, there's an awful lot of responsible reporting on this topic, and I could go on for hours. But the point is, it was obvious to me that he was murdered. It was obvious to me that Trump's attorney general knew he was murdered and that he lied about it. And I've said that in public many times. He's threatened to sue me, and I hope he does, because I'd love to go through discovery on that. That is the beginning of the actual scandal. Jeffrey Epstein was indicted federally in August of 2019 for the same crimes he'd been convicted of in Florida in 2006. Why did they do that? Well, it's to get him back from France. And they arrested him at Teterboro Private Airport in New Jersey. He goes directly to detention. A month later, he's dead. Why? Well, it's very obvious to me, and I'm not the only person who thinks this, trust me, that he was, this was done with the knowledge of governments,
so then
including the U.S. government.
Well, I think that's pretty scandalous. What do you think? A man who trafficked human beings, who exploited children, who received institutional protection because he was deemed useful to government intelligence. The pattern repeats. Power protects those who serve it, even when those people commit unspeakable crimes. But I don't let this go so easily or get by with such a simple explanation. I think it went far deeper than just Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, if he was working for Intel, why would they allow him to do it? He had cameras in all of his houses. He had people from, very powerful people from around the globe visiting him. And he recorded them in, we believe, compromising positions. Evidently, there are thousands of hours of video that we have been denied access to view. And, today with modern technology, you could blur out the victims, so there's no possibility of exposing them to further trauma. But what about the people who participated? Well, a lot of people want to know who those people were, and I think we do know who many of them were. But what I want to know, and what I continue to demand knowing, is who sponsored Jeffrey Epstein? Who did Epstein work for? Was he just engaged in blackmail for his own benefit? Or was he working on behalf of our own intel or possibly Mossad? Speculation abounds. But the patterns and the memes and the narratives are just too pat, and they're too similar across a variety of tragedies and events. Well, we can't talk about the notable events without considering recent assassination attempts on President Trump. On July 13th, 2024, there was an assassination attempt on President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. In September 24th, there was another assassination attempt in West Palm Beach, Florida. Now, here are indisputable facts. The assassination attempts occurred. The official investigations reached their conclusions, but most like me who've bothered to look and look closely, just don't buy the official story. Put me solidly in that camp. So was Roger Stone, by the way. Here's what he had to say when we interviewed him on The Truth.
Almost immediately after the shooting, a source of mine who's in in Pennsylvania law enforcement called me on the phone and said that he believed that the shooter was not Thomas Matthew Crooks, but Matthew Yerrick, a man who had been arrested previously at an altercation at a Trump event in Pennsylvania. So I speculated about, I didn't say flatly that Yerrick was the shooter. I said a law enforcement source has contacted me arguing that Matthew Yerrick was the actual shooter.
It's a theory that I am open to receiving information about and have actually looked at pretty carefully. Zach DiGregorio on Wolves and Finance did an episode and an expose where he zeroed in on the body of the fallen shooter on top of the AGR building. That person clearly had visible scars on his ears. Thomas Matthew Crooks is not believed to have had scars, but Maxwell Urich did, because he used to wear gauges, or previously wore gauges. He took those out. When his ears healed, they left scars. Maxwell Urich's parents, coincidentally, filed a missing persons report on him the day after Butler. To my knowledge, he has not been seen or heard from since. The curious thing to me is, and the troublesome thing, frankly, is when you think about it. Who's the person with the most direct stake in knowing the truth? He's the one who is not demanding answers. What does this tell us? Frankly, I don't know. We have a clip on that, Anthony? Okay. Well, contemplate that. Let's leave that for now. And let's turn our attention to another tragedy of overwhelming grief. On September the 10th, 2025, my wife and I, Helen, were enjoying lunch with our middle son when a news flash came over the television screen announcing Charlie Kirk had been shot. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Now, we could spend a lot of time talking about the assassination, all the things that don't add up. I'll just say this for the sake of time. But it's a similar storyline that we've been relating to the other events, just a different chapter and verse. And in the interest of time, we'll just show you a short clip from fellow YouTuber Jimmy Dore and his take on Tucker's death.
I mean, Charlie had started to have an awakening.
Oh, you think?
He had a lot younger than I had it.
Yeah.
And so that's why they had to kill him. And when I say they, I mean multiple. There was a conspiracy to kill him. It wasn't some guy, Tyler Robinson, with his grandpa's rifle, which was never fired, which is why they couldn't find that rifle. You have to swallow so much stuff to believe the story that the establishment is pushing for Charlie Kirk's assassination. Yeah. You have to think that this, first of all, a 30-06 bullet didn't take his head clean off or leave a drive-through window in the back of his neck. Somehow he had a miracle. His miracle bullet, remember that? Hey, can you give me an explanation of why his head didn't blow off without a miracle? Do you have an actual explanation? No. So, but it goes back to, so this guy gets to the campus. He drives all of a sudden he wakes up one day and goes, you know what? I'm going to commit the biggest public assassination in the last 60 years. He drives to the campus. He finds the open stairwell. It's open. Nobody's there. He brings the gun up, but it's too big. So he has to take it apart and put it in his backpack. Still too big for his backpack. So he has to put it down his pant legs is what they tell. But then if he did, he couldn't go up the steps because he couldn't bend his knees. So I don't know how he got it up there. Nobody will tell me. So he gets up there and then he changes his clothes. He's up on top of that roof for 10 minutes. That's according to the governor. He was up there for 8 to 10 minutes. Nobody sees him. The cops don't see him. The $1 million security team doesn't see him. Nobody sees him except people in the crowd did see him. And they don't tell you that. People, just like in Butler, Pennsylvania, people in the crowd saw him. Guess who didn't see him? The cops, the local cops, the state cops, the Secret Service. People see him. So, and then he puts the gun together. He lines up the shot, puts a scope on it. By the way, if that scope was on it, he couldn't fire that gun because of the safe. Anyway, so he lines it up, takes the shot, hits it perfectly, takes the gun apart, leaves the screwdriver there, puts it under a towel, Spider-Man's his way off the top of a building, runs across campus with the gun apparently under a towel. Nobody sees this. He runs into the woods, puts the gun back together again without the screwdriver. He's a regular MacGyver, this guy. And then he hides the gun in the backyard of a house owned by Palantir. And if you think anything else besides that, you're a crazy hating conspiracy nut.
Well, we heard from Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson earlier in the show. he likewise had thoughts on Charlie's assassination.
You
Fair
think
to
about Charlie Kirk, for example, and what's happening right now with that assassination, which I can't even tell you what's happening. I don't even know. The FBI has been so unforthcoming, but I know. I told you, I'm a weapons guy. That did not happen the way they're saying it happened. And I doubt very seriously if that guy stuck a 30-06 down his pants leg and walked away.
So what do you make of all this? What emerges from these cases and patterns are repetitive similar events. When a person or a movement threatens institutional power, when they cannot be controlled or redirected, they're removed. The threat is eliminated, and then the narrative is controlled. The official stories are presented, the case is closed, inconvenient questions are not responded to, inconvenient evidence is not presented, and the American people are told just to trust their government. Well, Donald Trump has been working, I believe, in earnest to deconstruct the deep state. He has made a lot of progress. But folks, I don't think any of us ever thought it would be easy. I was very disappointed when Tulsi Gabbard resigned her position as head of DNI, the intelligence overseeing part of our government. And we've had such great hopes that we would get transparency and that Donald Trump would dismantle the deep state. But, you know, when you go back in time, when CIA Director Richard Helms was called on the spot for having not disclosed or delivered documents that were under a congressional subpoena, he went back to the CIA headquarters and ordered that the documents be destroyed. Well, he was ultimately fined a whopping $2,000. When the punishment came down, people in the CIA lined the hallways to donate $100, $200, $20 to help pay off Director Helms' fine. I think that speaks volumes. Well, when Tulsi Gabbard started declassifying documents that presumably implicated the CIA, here's what happened.
Just in, John, the CIA just raided Tulsi Gabbard's office. Agents hauled out dozens of boxes, files on the JFK assassination and MK Ultra, the CIA mind control operation, which she was in the process of declassifying. Today's whistleblower said it during his deposition, and Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna confirmed it moments ago.
The reason why this is troubling is, A, there was an executive order that the president had directed the full declassification of JFK, but then also to the MK Ultra files. The CIA famously has said that, you know, all documents were released and other documents had been destroyed. So these are allegedly those documents that apparently never existed.
So that all of this just leaves me with the question of what must we do? And I hate to intervene during the celebration of the July 4th holiday, but and to interrupt the joy. But the fact of the matter is, I am vitally concerned about the future of this country. And I firmly believe that the federal government that governs us is absolutely rotten to its core, as I have repeated here many, many times over the last 4 years. So rather than lulling you into a happy place, I want to alert you to the things that I believe demand our collective attention. So what do we do? Well, history gives us a roadmap. Moral nations have survived immoral governments, but it requires men, Christian men, to step forward. We cannot be intimidated. Charlie Kirk and I discussed that when he came on The Truth before his assassination. Well, I felt for a long time that this tendency to label people racist when certain people or groups don't agree with their ideology is a big manipulation. And I think conservatives have fallen for the manipulation. And everyone is so worried about being labeled a racist that it chills their speech and controls their behavior.
No, that's right. And so one of the things we talk about in the book is that you should care about everything more except one thing: you should care less. You should care less about what the left calls you. You shouldn't care less. It doesn't matter if they call you a racist or a bigot or a homophobe or a misogynist or a colonialist. It means nothing. It has no currency. It has no value. It has no bearing. And to go even a level further, the power that the left currently has over America, more than anything else, is weaponized name calling. It is fourth grade style tactics. Now, they also control the FBI, they control the banks, they control all that. But at its core, the cultural power they have is that they can make you stop. They can make you stop thinking, stop working, stop acting, stop canvassing, stop anything if they call you a racist, if they call you a transphobe. Stop giving them that power is what we say in the book. Reject the premise, refuse their terms, and say, no, I really don't care what you call me. It means absolutely nothing to me. And in the book, Right Wing Revolution, we talk about what happens when that actually occurs.
How many more clips do we have?
Falls apart.
Well, Charlie nailed it. And, I've thought a lot about that interview since we did it. And I don't think that we can allow ourselves to be intimidated, not if we care about the next 250 years in this country. And I think we all have to come together and work to preserve our freedom and to re-energize and re-inject morality into our federal government. I think it starts by eradicating the cancer that has most assuredly infected the government. I think Donald Trump is trying, but they aren't going to go quietly or easily. Had a conversation with Dr. Alveda King, which we've played parts of earlier in the broadcast, but on this very notion, here's what Dr. King, one smart lady, has to say.
None of our issues none of our issues will ever be resolved without the power and guidance of Almighty God. My uncle had more prayers and more sermons than he did famous speeches. A lot of people don't know that. And so that's where the real truth is, that we need the Lord, we need to repent, we need to come together, and then God can truly bless us, and he can truly bless our nation.
And I've called for a cleansing in America. I think all the secrets have to come out. I think they're trying to get them out. But when you look at the fact that Tulsi Gabbard was getting them out, and then she suddenly resigns from her office 2 weeks after her physical office was burglarized and documents that she was declassifying were stolen. It just is proof positive, folks. It is proof positive that we have people operating inside our federal government, namely the CIA and the FBI and probably other alphabet agencies, who are operating outside the bounds of the Constitution and the laws of this country. They must be identified, and they must be held accountable, and they must be removed from their positions of authority. So what can we do? We can pray, but don't put prayer in place of action. Put prayer underneath your action. Vote, and vote like it matters. Get your spouse, your friends, your relatives, fellow parishioners. We all must show up for the midterms and vote. And then you can lead in your home, in your church, in your community. The most powerful thing a person can do is, for this nation, is to raise children who fear God and love truth. The second most powerful thing that a man can do, or a woman, in your marriage, in your workplace, in your church, and in your neighborhood, is to spread the truth. So can a moral nation survive an immoral government? Yes, but only if its moral people refuse to become immoral themselves. Only if they refuse to grow cynical, silent, or comfortable. Only if they remember who they are and whose we are. And that is the truth. And I thank you for listening today and going through this with me. We have more interviews to come, so stick with us, and we'll be right back after these words. Do you ever grind through the day like I do? You need that perfect kick without the jitters? Grab some Bone Frog Coffee. They're our studio sponsor. And best of yet, they are veteran-owned, founded by retired Navy SEAL Tim Cruikshank as a tribute to his fallen teammates in the Naval Special Warfare community. Each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special operations. If you don't already know it, the Bone Frog is a sacred symbol of SEAL teams that represent those that gave their lives in combat and is a reminder of the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom and the American way of life. Every bag, premium, small batch, roasted from top shelf Arabica beans, smooth, low acid, no Robusta junk. Think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or the classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup. And here's the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes straight to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families. They're aiming to raise $500,000. Coffee with a cause? Yeah, that's not a slogan. It's brotherhood brewed daily. Head to bonefrogcoffee.com, snag some K-Cups, whole beans, or merchandise. Use the promo code TRUTH. Start your day like I do. Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our vets and thank Bone Frog for sponsoring our studio. Check them out now at bonefrogcoffee.com. That's www.bonefrogcoffee.com. So before we leave you today, I want to just mention a couple of other things. The war and the peace negotiations in Iran are dragging out, and I have been giving a lot of thought to what might be going on there. As I've said many times over the last several months, I think that President Trump may have gotten some bad advice. He may have gotten sucked into this war with Iran. And the reason I say that is because it's so different from what he promised when he was running for president and the president of peace that he has said that he stands for. However, I have also been quick to add that I think the taking of our embassy in 1978, the killing of 43,000 of their own people in this calendar year alone, and the threat of a nuclear weapon, and any of one of those would be significant enough provocation to enter a conflict with them. My only thesis is I think President Trump underestimated the Iranians. We took out 2 levels of their leadership, but the remaining leaders seem to me to be digging their heels in. They have said that Israel has to remove their troops from Lebanon, and Israel has said they're not doing it. And that is sidetracking the peace negotiations, derailing them. I'm sure that President Trump is frustrated by it. And the other component of that is I believe that the Iranian leaders that we're dealing, or the people that we're dealing with, are savvy and they're smart. Now, I think President Trump entered this. He thought that he would go in just like we did in Venezuela. We'd get rid of the leadership. We'd win over their people, and that the conflict would be over with, that the Strait of Hormuz would be reopened, gas prices would start to plummet, and everything would be right with the world just as we embark and look towards the midterm elections. I think the Iranians know that that is a pressure point and that they have Trump to some extent backed into a corner. And I'll tell you why. The majority of the people in the United States, unlike me, do not like the war with Iran. They just plain don't like it. And I think there is a level of distrust where Israel is concerned. And all of these factors are putting tremendous pressure on Trump. The Iranians know that they have got him over a barrel, because if he isn't able to secure peace before the midterms, we could lose one or more houses in Congress. So that has got to be a concern. It is a reality, and that I'm sure the Trump administration is wrestling with. And this is not for the faint of heart. And I think that it's probably really wearing on President Trump. In the meantime, the New York Post reported on just yesterday that the FBI had gotten the agreement of a member of Gavin Newsom's inner circle to wear a wire. Presumably, the wire was to record conversations with Gavin Newsom or members, maybe his wife. We don't know who was in the conversations or what was discussed. But the point is, and this happened, by the way, in 2024. So it was under the Biden administration that the investigation into Gavin Newsom began. And there are allegations that money has been from NGOs has been funneled into Gavin Newsom. I don't know if it's campaign or to him personally or to his wife, or how the money, what you have to follow the money. And we don't have the pieces of the puzzle yet, but just be sure that the FBI is there. Gavin Newsom may well have his turn in the barrel. A lot of people are asking, where is the $30 billion that paid for the train to nowhere? Well, with all of the tough news of the day on this day of celebration for the 4th of July, I do want to leave you with a clip from the UFC fighter Colby Covington. I saw an interview with him, and I was really impressed with this young man. And I think this is a good jumping off point for our show today. So let's listen to Colby Covington. Have a good rest of your 4th of July. Let me know what you think. Write to me, johngordontruth@gmail.com, or leave your comments in the comment section on any of our social media. And thank you for joining us on our CDM.press affiliates, as well as the John Fredericks Media Network. Now here's Colby Covington, and have a wonderful rest of your Saturday and a great 4th of July.
How did you go through that about not becoming a sellout? Because you could have just said, like, I'm not going to speak out against anything. And you could have continued making millions and millions of dollars from these partnerships. What made you like, it's all right, I'll miss out on a few million?
Because I think once you get to a certain level of success and wealth, that there's just, you don't need any more. I have a house, I have everything that I need in life. I'm happy, like I don't need anything more. I don't need a bigger house, I don't need a nicer car. I'm happy with everything I have. So now I just want to stand for truth. I feel like when we meet, God one day, he's going to judge us by our actions here on planet Earth. So I just want to make sure I'm a good person, I'm a son of God, and I do the right thing and stand for truth.